Can you imagine the feeling of discovering that a missing person's car simply came home on its own? 3 weeks later, in perfect condition, and with obvious signs that someone had been taking care of it all this time. On April 15, 2022, Janet Morrison's metallic blue Honda Civic disappeared along with her on a deserted Nevada highway, creating a mystery that initially seemed to follow known patterns of disappearances on American highways. Janet Morrison, a 41-year-old nurse and devoted mother of 2 teenagers, was taking what should have been a routine road trip from Reno to Las Vegas along Highway 95, a route she had traveled dozens of times over the years to visit her elderly mother. There was nothing unusual about this particular trip. She had planned to stay only 2 days, had confirmed hotel reservations, and had promised her children she would be back in time for her daughter's soccer game that weekend. Have you ever had that agonizing experience of knowing that someone you love is running late and your phone goes straight to voicemail? That's exactly what Janet's family experienced when she didn't arrive at her destination on time and didn't answer calls or messages. What started as normal concern quickly turned into panic when it became clear that Janet had simply disappeared without a trace on one of Nevada's busiest highways. 3 weeks later, when authorities and family had already expanded the search to include vast areas of the Nevada desert and were beginning to accept the possibility that Janet might never be found, something extraordinary happened that transformed this conventional disappearance case into a mystery that defies logical explanation. Janet's Honda Civic was found in the parking lot of Sunrise Hospital in Las Vegas, exactly 197 miles from where its GPS had last recorded its location 3 weeks earlier. But it wasn't simply found. The vehicle was carefully positioned in a parking space, with the radio still playing a classical music station that Janet never listened to, the keys inserted in the ignition as if someone had just left for a quick appointment, and the gas tank completely full. Stay with me until the end, because the forensic analysis of this vehicle revealed aspects that forced investigators to reconsider everything they thought they knew about Janet's disappearance. The car hadn't been abandoned for 3 weeks. All the evidence indicated that someone had been driving it regularly, keeping it clean, fueled, and in perfect mechanical condition. The most disturbing thing of all was a question no one could answer. If Janet was dead or being held against her will, why would anyone bother to keep her car in perfect condition and then return it to a location where it could be easily found? And if she was alive, why hadn't she tried to escape or contact her family for 3 whole weeks? What you are about to discover may surprise you, because the investigation into the Honda Civic that returned on its own revealed evidence suggesting that someone not only meticulously cared for Janet's vehicle, but deliberately positioned it where it would be quickly discovered, almost as if sending a specific message to family or authorities. Analysis of the car's computer data showed that it had been driven over 800 miles during the 3 weeks Janet was missing, far more than would have been necessary to simply transport it from where she disappeared to where it was found. Someone had used Janet's car as if it were their own vehicle, but then made the inexplicable decision to return it exactly where her family could find it. This case forces us to confront disturbing questions about the motivations behind crimes that transcend known patterns, and about the possibility that some people who commit terrible acts still retain some kind of moral code that compels them to minimize the suffering of innocent families. Now let's find out exactly who Janet Morrison was, why an experienced nurse and responsible mother decided to take that trip alone, and how a woman known for her caution and responsibility could simply disappear on a road she knew perfectly well. But before we delve into Janet's life and the specific circumstances that led to her disappearance, I need to share something important with you. When I began investigating this case, I realized that we are dealing with a type of mystery that goes far beyond conventional disappearances. We are exploring a phenomenon that challenges our understanding of criminal motivations and how some perpetrators can demonstrate contradictory behaviors that include both violence and unexpected acts of consideration. If this topic resonates with you, if you've also wondered about the complex psychological aspects behind crimes that seem to follow rules we can't fully understand, leave a comment below about what has resonated with you so far. Have you heard of other cases where evidence was returned in inexplicable ways? Or Perhaps you have theories about why someone would take such care of a victim's vehicle before returning it. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of investigative content that explores real mysteries affecting real families. Every comment you leave not only helps me understand what types of cases resonate most with you, but also creates a community of people interested in understanding more complex aspects of criminal behavior that are often overlooked by mainstream media. And look, if you're feeling that same unease I felt when I first found out about the Honda Civic that returned on its own in perfect condition, click the like button below. It shows me I'm on the right track, bringing you cases that truly challenge our understanding of how crimes can unfold in ways that transcend typical patterns. If you want to continue exploring these mysteries with me that reveal more complex aspects of human behavior in extreme situations, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because I can guarantee that Janet Morrison's story will reveal layers of complexity about criminal psychology that go far beyond simple victim disappearance. And I have other cases where physical evidence tells stories that seem impossible but are documented and verifiable. It is this conscious and engaged community that we have built together that makes it possible for me to dedicate weeks investigating every detail, talking to the victims, families, consulting experts in criminal psychology, and above all, keeping alive the memory of people like Janet while we search for understanding that can help prevent similar tragedies. Janet Morrison was born and raised in Reno, Nevada, in a family of healthcare professionals who valued both service to others and personal responsibility. At 41, she had built a reputation as one of the most dedicated and competent nurses at renowned regional medical center, specializing in emergency medicine and known for her ability to remain calm during the most challenging medical crises. Janet's life was characterized by predictability and careful planning that reflected both her professional training and her role as a single mother of 2 teenage children. She had divorced amicably 3 years before her disappearance, but maintained a positive relationship with her ex-husband and had built a stable, independent life that included regular routines, financial security, and strong connections. With both her children and her aging mother in Las Vegas, the shift in understanding about Janet's disappearance began when investigators analyzed the specific circumstances of the trip that would change everything forever. On April 15, 2022, she had made the decision to drive alone to Las Vegas to visit her 73-year-old mother, Dorothy Morrison, who was recovering from cataract surgery and needed help for a few days. This trip was not unusual. Janet had traveled the route between Reno and Las Vegas approximately once a month for over 10 years, always along Highway 95, a route she knew so well she could drive with her eyes closed. The impact of the specific circumstances of this particular trip became evident when family and authorities reconstructed the events of the days leading up to the disappearance. Janet had meticulously planned every aspect of the trip, including booking the same hotel she always used, scheduling specific appointments to help her mother, and even making arrangements for a neighbor to check on her apartment and water her plants during her absence. The journey through the behind-the-scenes preparations for Janet's trip revealed a woman who operated with a level of organization and predictability that made her subsequent disappearance all the more inexplicable. She had filled up the Honda Civic with gas the morning of her departure, checked the tire pressure, and informed both her children and ex-husband of her exact departure and estimated arrival times. More significantly, she had set alarms on her phone to remind herself to make regular check-ins during the trip. The hidden truth about Janet's mindset during the final moments before her disappearance emerged through analysis of her last documented communication. At 2:23 p.m. on April 15th, she had recorded an audio message for her 16-year-old daughter, Emma, who was at school. The message, which never reached its destination due to signal problems in the area, was later recovered from Janet's phone when authorities obtained records from her carrier. The revelations contained in this final message painted a picture of a woman who was feeling completely normal and safe during her trip. Janet had commented on the beauty of the desert landscape, mentioned that she had stopped for lunch at a well-known restaurant in the town of Hawthorne, and expressed enthusiasm about spending time with her mother. There was nothing in the message to suggest stress, fear, or any indication that she was facing problems or feeling threatened. The decision by family and friends that something was definitely wrong didn't happen gradually, but suddenly and unanimously when Janet didn't arrive at the Las Vegas hotel at the scheduled time. Dorothy Morrison, who knew her daughter's punctuality better than anyone, immediately knew something terrible had happened when Janet didn't show up at 6 p.m. as planned and wasn't answering phone calls. The panic that gripped the family was intensified by everyone's intimate knowledge of the safety protocols Janet always religiously followed. She never traveled without informing multiple people of her plans, never went more than a few hours without answering the phone, and never changed plans without communicating with everyone involved. The fact that she had simply disappeared without a trace contradicted everything the family knew about her character and habits. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the accurate reconstruction of the events of April 15th revealed the exact moment when a routine trip turned into a mystery that would challenge investigators for months, beginning with the last GPS signal registered by Janet's Honda Civic in a remote area of Highway 95 that would become the epicenter of one of the most puzzling missing person investigations in recent Nevada history. Comment below. Janet was super organized. If you're also noticing that Janet's profile as an extremely meticulous and predictable person makes her disappearance even more mysterious, because people with her level of planning and responsibility simply don't vanish without leaving clear indications of what happened. The precise reconstruction of the events of April 15th revealed the exact moment when a routine trip transformed into a mystery that would challenge investigators for months, beginning with the last GPS signal registered by Janet's Honda Civic in a remote area of Highway 95 that would become the epicenter of one of the most intriguing missing person investigations in recent Nevada history. The transformation of a family trip into a national investigation happened gradually, as evidence accumulated showing that something extraordinary had interrupted the journey of a woman who knew the route perfectly well. The impact analysis of the planned route revealed that Janet had chosen the most direct and safe route from Reno to Las Vegas, following Highway 95 South, a well-maintained federal highway she had traveled hundreds of times over more than a decade. This specific route was considered one of the safest for travel between the two cities, with multiple gas stations, rest areas, and consistent cell phone coverage along virtually the entire 450-mile journey. The journey through the meticulous reconstruction of Janet's movements during the day of her disappearance showed that everything had progressed normally until approximately 3:45 p.m., when her phone recorded its last successful communication with cell towers. GPS data subsequently recovered showed that she was maintaining a consistent speed of 65-70 mph, had made only one documented stop for lunch in Hawthorne as planned, and was progressing exactly according to her estimated schedule. The hidden truth about where the trail was lost emerged when investigators precisely mapped the location of the last recorded GPS signal. Janet's Honda Civic had transmitted its final position at 3:52 p.m. in a remote area, approximately 35 miles north of Tonopah, Nevada, on a section of Highway 95 characterized by desert landscape, sparse traffic, and significant distance from any town or gas station. The initial investigative mindset of the authorities was influenced by statistics showing that approximately 40% of missing adult cases involved voluntary departure or an attempt to start a new life elsewhere. Detective Sarah Rodriguez, who was assigned as lead investigator, later admitted that the initial approach was to treat this as a potential voluntary missing person case, especially given that the victim was an adult with access to financial resources and no apparent immediate threats. Behind the scenes of the initial searches, efforts were revealed to be both comprehensive and misdirected due to incorrect assumptions about the motivations behind the disappearance. Search teams initially focused on areas around the last known GPS location, using helicopters, sniffer dogs, and volunteers to cover a radius of several miles around the location where the signal had been lost. These searches continued for 5 days without discovering any trace of the Honda Civic or Janet herself. The revelations about why authorities initially treated the case as voluntary abandonment included the absence of evidence of foul play, a lack of witnesses reporting accidents or suspicious activity in the area, and historical patterns suggesting that adults frequently disappear voluntarily during periods of life. Transition. The fact that Janet had recently gone through a divorce, even if amicable, was considered a potential contributing factor to her decision to leave voluntarily. The decision to reconsider the voluntary abandonment theory came when evidence accumulated contradicting every aspect of voluntary disappearance. Janet had left behind a savings account with over $15,000, had not made any unusual financial transactions in the days before disappearing, and had not shown any signs of planning an extended absence from her life in Reno. Even more convincingly, she had scheduled multiple appointments for weeks following her planned return, including a medical checkup for her mother and a parent-teacher conference for her son. The shift in investigative approach included recognizing that Janet's disappearance exhibited characteristics inconsistent with voluntary missing person cases, but also didn't fit typical patterns for violent crimes or traffic accidents. Analysis of her digital footprint revealed no searches for new locations, no communication with potential romantic interests, and no indication of financial problems or personal crises that might motivate someone to abandon their established life. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because 3 weeks after intensive search efforts had failed to locate any trace of Janet or her vehicle, something happened that would transform this missing person investigation into one of the most baffling automotive mysteries in recent Nevada history. The sudden reappearance of her Honda Civic in a location that raised more questions than answers. 3 weeks after intensive search efforts failed to locate any trace of Janet or her vehicle, something happened that would transform this missing person investigation into one of the most perplexing automotive mysteries in recent Nevada history. The sudden reappearance of her Honda Civic in a location that raised more questions than answers. The turning point in the case occurred on the morning of May 6, 2022, when a routine call to the Las Vegas Police Department initiated a series of discoveries that would force investigators to completely reconsider all their previous theories about what had happened to Janet Morrison. The impact of the discovery was immediate and profound when Officer Michael Santos responded to a call about a suspicious vehicle in the parking lot of Sunrise Hospital in Las Vegas. What he found defied all his investigative experience. A metallic blue Honda Civic, carefully positioned in a regular parking space, appearing to have been left there by someone who had simply entered the hospital for a routine medical appointment. The journey through the initial scene analysis revealed details that immediately alerted Officer Santos that something extraordinary was happening. The vehicle wasn't abandoned in the typical way. It was clean, organized, and positioned in a manner that suggested consideration and deliberate intent. More significantly, when Santos approached the car to check the license plates, he could clearly hear the sound of a radio playing inside the vehicle. The hidden truth about the vehicle's condition only emerged when Santos managed to look through the windows and check the interior of the Honda Civic. The radio was tuned to a classical music station on 101.5 FM. The keys were in the ignition in the accessory position, which allowed the radio to operate without completely draining the battery, and the fuel gauge showed a full tank. The investigative mindset had to adapt quickly when license plate verification confirmed that this was indeed Janet Morrison's Honda Civic, reported missing 3 weeks earlier. Officer Santos immediately secured the scene and contacted Detective Rodriguez, who arrived within minutes to begin what would be one of the most complex vehicle examinations of his career. Behind the scenes of the discovery, even more puzzling aspects of the vehicle's condition were revealed. The car's interior was immaculate. No trash, no signs of struggle, and no indication that it had been abandoned for an extended period. Documents in the glove compartment were organized exactly as Janet typically kept them, and personal items like sunglasses and lip balm were positioned naturally in the places where she normally put them. The revelations about why the location was impossible to explain began when investigators mapped precisely where the vehicle had been, found in relation to Janet's last known GPS location. Sunrise Hospital was located exactly 197 miles from the area where her signal had disappeared, but the route between the 2 points required driving through several cities, multiple gas stations, and areas with heavy traffic where an abandoned car would be immediately noticed. A decisão de treat discovery como crime scene foi tomada quando o detetive Rodrigues recognized que multiple aspects da situation transcended normal patterns para both. Abandoned vehicles in missing person cases. Vehicle havia clearly been maintained e cared for durante a 3-week period. Positioning no hospital parking lot suggested deliberate placement. E condition do interior indicated recent use by someone familiar come Janet's organization habits. The transformation in the investigation included recognizing that whoever had left a vehicle in the hospital parking lot had taken significant care to ensure it would be discovered quickly, but without damage. Location choice. A busy hospital where cars regularly come and go provided perfect cover for someone to leave a vehicle without attracting immediate attention, but guaranteed eventual discovery when parking patterns indicated an extended stay. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this matter because detailed forensic analysis of the Honda Civic revealed evidence that would fundamentally change investigators' understanding of the case, including signs that someone had been regularly driving the vehicle for an entire 3-week period and taking meticulous care to maintain its condition in ways that suggested either deep knowledge of Janet's habits or a disturbing level of attention to detail. Comment below. The car was taken care of. If you also realize that the Honda Civic's perfect condition after 3 weeks, combined with its strategic placement in the hospital parking lot, suggests that whoever was responsible for Janet's disappearance also took deliberate steps to ensure that her vehicle would be returned in a condition that would minimize additional trauma for her family. Detailed forensic analysis of the Honda Civic revealed evidence that would fundamentally change investigators' understanding of the case, including signs that someone had been regularly driving the vehicle throughout the 3-week period and taking meticulous care to maintain its condition in ways that suggested either in-depth knowledge of Janet's habits or a disturbing level of attention to detail. The transformation in the investigation occurred when forensic experts began systematically processing every aspect of the vehicle and discovered evidence that completely contradicted the theory that the car had simply been abandoned after Janet's disappearance. The impact of the mileage analysis was immediate and shocking when investigators compared the current odometer reading with records kept by Janet's regular mechanic. The Honda Civic had accumulated an additional 847 miles since its last documented mileage reading a week before the disappearance. This distance was far greater than the 197 miles needed to transport the vehicle from its last GPS location to Sunrise Hospital, suggesting that someone had used the car extensively during that 3-week period. The journey through detailed examination of the tires revealed wear patterns that confirmed regular and careful use during the period in question. Tread wear patterns showed that the vehicle had been driven primarily on highways and city streets, with minimal off-road use that would be expected if the car had been hidden in a remote location. More significantly, analysis revealed that the tires had been recently rotated and balanced, maintenance that Janet had not scheduled before her disappearance. The hidden truth about evidence of recent use emerged when forensic specialists discovered that multiple systems in the vehicle had been recently serviced in ways that went beyond basic maintenance. The oil change sticker on the windshield showed a date just 2 days before the vehicle was discovered. The windshield washer fluid had been topped off, and even the air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror was a brand new replacement for a specific scent that Janet typically used. The investigative mindset had to adapt when fingerprint analysis revealed a complexity that exceeded expectations for a straightforward missing person case. Primary fingerprints throughout the vehicle belonged to Janet, as expected, but investigators also discovered partial prints that did not match any person in the AFIS database. Even more puzzling, the distribution of these unknown prints suggested that the person had been driving the car regularly, but had also taken care to wipe down most surfaces. Behind-the-scenes DNA analysis revealed findings that raised additional questions about the nature of the case. In addition to Janet's DNA, which was found throughout the vehicle as expected, investigators discovered traces of DNA from at least 2 other individuals, one male and one female, primarily concentrated in the driver's seat and steering wheel areas. However, these DNA samples were too degraded to produce matches in existing databases. The revelations about the vehicle's state of conservation, impossible for abandonment, after 3 weeks, included aspects that transcended simple maintenance. The vehicle's interior had been regularly cleaned during that period. Personal items had been carefully maintained in their original positions, and even Janet's prescription sunglasses had been cleaned and placed exactly where she typically kept them. A decisão de investigate fuel mystery revelou perhaps most disturbing aspect do case. Tank estava not apenas full, mas análisis do gasoline mostrou que havia been recently purchased. Chemical composition indicated fuel age de no more than 48 hours before vehicle foi discovered. Gas station receipts found in glove compartment mostravam purchases from 3 different locations in Las Vegas area during week preceding discovery, all paid in cash. The transformation in understanding the case included recognizing that whoever had been caring for the vehicle possessed detailed knowledge of Janet's habits, preferences, and maintenance routines. The person or persons responsible had maintained the car exactly as Janet would have done it herself, suggesting either extensive surveillance prior to the disappearance or access to information about her personal habits, which was deeply intimate. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because analysis of the evidence found in the Honda Civic forced investigators to consider theories about the motivations behind Janet's disappearance that ranged from human trafficking operations to more personal crimes involving someone with detailed knowledge of her life, raising disturbing questions about whether her abductor was a stranger or someone from her established social circle. Analysis of the evidence found in the Honda Civic forced investigators to consider theories about the motivations behind Janet's disappearance, ranging from human trafficking operations to more personal crimes involving someone with detailed knowledge of her life, raising disturbing questions about whether her kidnapper was a stranger or someone from her established social circle. The shift in investigative approach occurred when authorities realized they needed to develop complex psychological profiles to explain behavior that combined extreme violence, the enforced disappearance of a person, with almost obsessive care for the preservation of their personal property. The impact of the remorseful or repentant kidnapper theory gained credibility when criminal profilers analyzed behavioral patterns demonstrated through the meticulous care of Janet's vehicle. Dr. Lisa Chen, a criminal psychology expert at the University of Nevada, observed that individuals who commit impulsive crimes often experience periods of remorse that may manifest through attempts to minimize further trauma to the victims' families. The journey through the analysis of this theory revealed precedents in other cases where perpetrators had taken steps to return victims' personal property as a form of psychological compensation for crimes they could not undo. The care shown in maintaining Janet's car in perfect condition, combined with strategic placement where it would be easily discovered, suggested that whoever was responsible was struggling with guilt over the actions they had taken. The hidden truth about the possibility of human trafficking emerged when investigators considered that the vehicle's return could represent the elimination of evidence after the victim had been transported to a different location or jurisdiction. This theory suggested that Janet had been taken for purposes related to forced labor or sexual exploitation, and the car had been returned after sufficient time had passed to transport her beyond the reach of local law enforcement. The mindset behind this theory included the recognition that trafficking operations frequently used sophisticated methods to eliminate traces of their activities. Returning a vehicle in clean condition to a public location where it would be discovered by authorities could serve to redirect the investigation away from the victim's actual fate while simultaneously providing false hope to family members that the victim might still be alive. The behind-the-scenes analysis of the Good Samaritan hypothesis revealed the possibility that someone unconnected to the original crime had discovered the abandoned vehicle and taken it upon themselves to return it to the family. This theory suggested that Janet had indeed been a victim of crime, but that the vehicle had been found by a compassionate individual who recognized the importance of returning personal property to grieving relatives. The revelations regarding this theory included analysis of similar cases where members of the public had taken the initiative to return property to missing persons, even when doing so might implicate them in an investigation. However, The level of care demonstrated in maintaining the vehicle, combined with knowledge of Janet's personal habits evidenced through maintenance performed, made this explanation increasingly unlikely. The decision to seriously consider the most disturbing theory, that Janet was still alive when the car was returned, forced investigators to confront the possibility that she was being held against her will for an entire 3-week period, and that the vehicle's return represented a message or ransom demand of some kind. This possibility suggested that the perpetrator was keeping Janet in a location where she could observe care being taken with her possessions. A transformação investigation incluiu consideration de que timing do return, exactly 3 weeks após disappearance, might represent significant milestone para captor, such como completion de specific objectives ou decision sobre Janet's ultimate fate. Fact que vehicle foi returned in perfect condition durante time, when intensive search efforts were winding down, suggested strategic thinking sobre when return would create maximum psychological impact. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because analysis of the official investigation and response of the authorities to the discovery of the Honda Civic revealed both strengths and critical failures in the law enforcement approach that potentially compromised evidence and delayed recognition of the true nature of the crime that had occurred. Write this down. Theories scare me. If you're also noticing that each possible explanation for why Janet's car was returned in such pristine condition raises disturbing questions about the perpetrator's psychological state and suggests levels of planning and control that transcend typical criminal behavior patterns. The analysis of the official investigation and the authorities' response to the discovery of the Honda Civic revealed both strengths and critical flaws in the police approach that potentially compromised evidence and delayed the recognition of the true nature of the crime that had occurred. The transformation in the official stance happened gradually as investigators realized they were dealing with a case that transcended conventional crime categories and would require resources and expertise that went far beyond standard protocols for missing persons investigations. The impact of the authorities' initial reaction to the vehicle's reappearance was mixed, reflecting both professional competence and systemic limitations that frequently plagued complex investigations. Detective Rodriguez immediately recognized the significance of the discovery and moved quickly to secure the scene and initiate forensic analysis, but resource constraints and competing priorities within the department resulted in delays that potentially compromised critical aspects of the investigation. The journey through the analysis of security footage from Hospital Sunrise revealed both crucial information and frustrating gaps that exemplified challenges facing modern law enforcement in the age of surveillance technology. The hospital maintained a comprehensive camera system that covered most areas of the parking lot, but technical issues during a crucial period had resulted in gaps in coverage that precisely coincided with the time frame when Janet's vehicle had been deposited. The hidden truth about what the cameras recorded emerged when investigators managed to recover partial footage showing a figure obscured by hooded clothing exiting the parking lot on foot at approximately 2:30 a.m. when the vehicle was discovered. However, the image quality was insufficient for positive identification, and the timing suggested that the person had deliberately chosen a moment when parking lot activity was minimal. The investigative mindset had to adapt when analysis revealed that whoever had returned the vehicle possessed knowledge not only of the hospital layout, but also of security camera positions and coverage patterns. The route taken to the exit parking lot demonstrated awareness of blind spots in the surveillance system, suggesting either inside knowledge or extensive preparation that included reconnaissance of the location before the vehicle's return. The underlying issues surrounding the failures in preserving the crime scene revealed systemic problems that transcended individual mistakes. Initial responding officers had properly secured the immediate area around the vehicle, but the hospital parking lot continued normal operations, potentially contaminating the broader crime scene. More critically, a delay in recognizing the significance of the discovery meant that crucial evidence from the surrounding area might have been lost during the early hours after the vehicle was found. The revelations about compromised evidence included recognition that hospital staff and visitors had walked through the area, potentially disturbing tire tracks or footprints that might have provided clues about how a person arrived at the location or how they departed after leaving a vehicle. Additionally, the hospital's standard cleaning procedures for the parking lot had resumed before investigators recognized the need for expanded scene preservation. A decisão de reclassificar caso de missing person para homicide investigation represented acknowledgement de que evidence pointing para foul play havia become overwhelming. Combination de vehicles' mysterious return em pristine condition, evidence de extended use durante a 3-week period, e absence de any communication from Janet herself forced authorities para conclude que she havia been victim de crime rather than voluntary disappearance. A transformação na investigation approach incluiu assignment de additional resources, consultation com FBI specialists em missing persons cases, e coordination com other jurisdictions onde similar patterns might have occurred. Reclassification também triggered different legal procedures que allowed para more intensive investigation methods, including expanded warrant authority e access para federal databases que hadn't been available durante a missing person phase. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because the discovery that Janet's case wasn't an isolated incident, that multiple other vehicles had returned in mysterious circumstances following disappearances in Nevada and neighboring states, revealed disturbing patterns that suggested coordinated criminal activity operating across jurisdictional boundaries with sophistication that challenged traditional law enforcement approaches. The discovery that Janet's case was not an isolated incident, that multiple other vehicles had returned under mysterious circumstances following disappearances in Nevada and neighboring states, revealed disturbing patterns suggesting coordinated criminal activity operating across jurisdictional boundaries with sophistication that defied traditional law enforcement approaches. The shift in understanding the phenomenon occurred when federal investigators began systematically mapping similar cases and discovered correlations indicating something far larger than isolated crimes committed by individuals working independently. The impact of discovering other returned vehicles was profound when analysis revealed at least 6 documented cases in the last 5 years where cars belonging to missing persons had been found in similar conditions, clean, fueled, and strategically positioned in public places where they would be quickly discovered. Each case exhibited characteristics that echoed the pattern established by Janet's Honda Civic: meticulous maintenance during the period of absence, evidence of regular use, and timing of the return that suggested deliberate planning. The journey through the analysis of these cases revealed that what had initially been dismissed as regional coincidences actually represented a signature behavioral pattern of a criminal organization that operated with a consistency and sophistication that transcended typical criminal enterprises. Detective Maria Santos, who had coordinated a multi-jurisdictional task force to investigate these correlations, observed that we were dealing with individuals or groups who possessed resources, knowledge, and organizational capabilities that exceeded anything we had encountered in traditional criminal investigations. The hidden truth about the ghost car phenomenon emerged when researchers discovered that the pattern was not limited to Nevada, but extended across multiple western states, particularly in areas where major highways created corridors for interstate travel. Geographic analysis revealed clusters of incidents along routes, such as Highway 95, Interstate 80, and Highway 50, major arteries that connected major cities, but also passed through vast stretches of remote territory where crimes could occur without witnesses. The mindset behind criminal psychology involved in returning evidence of crimes forced experts to develop new theoretical frameworks for understanding behavior that combined extreme violence with unexpected displays of consideration for victims' families. Dr. Robert Chen, a forensic psychologist specializing in serial crime patterns, suggested that perpetrators might be operating under a psychological framework that allowed them to compartmentalize their actions, committing terrible crimes while simultaneously attempting to minimize additional trauma by returning personal property. Os bastidores da análise deste psychological phenomenon revelaron que it wasn't unprecedented para criminals para display contradictory behaviors que reflected internal conflicts sobre their actions. However, level de organization and consistency demonstrated across multiple cases suggested que this wasn't resultado de individual psychological states, mas rather systematic approach adopted por criminal enterprise que had developed specific protocols para handling victims' property. The revelations about geographic connections focused attention on Highway 95 as a potential corridor for organized criminal activity. This major route, which connected Canada to Mexico through remote areas of Nevada, California, and other western states, provided perfect infrastructure for transporting victims across jurisdictional boundaries while maintaining access to population centers where returned vehicles could be easily discovered. A decisão de analyze timing patterns across cases revelou additional correlations que supported theory de organized operation. Vehicles were typically returned between 2 para 4 weeks após initial disappearances, suggesting que this time frame represented some kind de operational cycle ou processing period para whatever fate awaited victims. Consistency deste timing across different jurisdictions and different perpetrator groups would be statistically impossible unless coordinated planning was involved. A transformação na understanding incluiu recognition de que traditional approaches para investigating missing persons cases were inadequate quando dealing com organized operations que possessed resources para maintain elaborate cover stories while simultaneously conducting systematic criminal activities. Need para federal coordination as specialized resources became apparent quando pattern analysis revealed scope de activity que transcended any individual law enforcement agency's jurisdiction or capabilities. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because 2.5 years after the discovery of Janet's Honda Civic, recent developments in the investigation have revealed both significant progress and disturbing new questions about the fate not only of Janet, but of other victims whose vehicles had been similarly returned under mysterious circumstances. Write this down. The pattern is organized. If you're also noticing that multiple cases of vehicles returning after disappearances, combined with geographical clusters along major highways, suggests a coordinated criminal enterprise operating with resources and sophistication that challenge traditional law enforcement approaches to missing persons investigations. 2.5 years after the discovery of Janet's Honda Civic, recent developments in the investigation have revealed both significant progress and disturbing new questions about the fate not only of Janet, but of other victims whose vehicles had been similarly returned under mysterious circumstances. The shift in investigative approach occurred when federal authorities took over coordination of the case and applied advanced technological resources that were not available during the initial phases of the investigation, revealing layers of complexity that forced a fundamental reconsideration of the nature and scale of the criminal operation involved. The impact of the investigation's current status 2 years later reflected both persistent frustrations and unexpected breakthroughs that kept hopes alive, while simultaneously deepening the mysteries surrounding Janet's disappearance. The federal task force that had assumed primary responsibility for the case managed to establish definitive connections between multiple disappearances across western states, but the location of Janet and other victims remained unknown despite substantial resources dedicated to the investigation. The journey through the application of new technologies revealed capabilities that transformed understanding of events that had transpired during the 3 weeks when Janet's Honda Civic was missing. Analysis of digital metadata from the vehicle's computer systems revealed a detailed log of every location the vehicle had visited, every time the engine had been started, and even specific driving patterns that provided insight into the behavioral characteristics of the person or persons who had been using the car. The hidden truth about technological revelations emerged when digital forensics specialists discovered that the vehicle's GPS system had been temporarily disabled during certain periods, suggesting that whoever was using the car possessed sufficient technical knowledge to manipulate automotive systems in ways that required specialized expertise. More significantly, analysis revealed that the car had been driven to multiple locations that were connected to other missing persons cases, creating a geographic web of connections that validated theories about organized criminal operations. A mentalidade da família Morrison, em continuing search para answers, demonstrated combination de determination e growing desperation que characterized families de missing persons, quando official investigations reached apparent dead ends. Emma Morrison, Janet's daughter, havia taken active role em maintaining public awareness sobre o case através de social media campaigns e grassroots organizing que kept pressure em authorities para continue pursuing leads. Behind the scenes, the family's efforts included hiring private investigators, consulting with psychics and spiritual advisors, and coordinating with other families of missing persons whose cases shared similar characteristics. The Morrison family had established a foundation dedicated to supporting families of missing persons and advocating for improved law enforcement protocols when dealing with cases that transcended traditional categories. The revelations about the reward offered and public appeals revealed an evolution in strategy since the initial disappearance. The current reward for information leading to Janet's recovery or the identification of the perpetrators had increased to $100,000, funded through a combination of family resources and donations from community members who had been moved by the case. Public appeals had evolved to target specific demographics, particularly people working in service industries along the Highway 95 corridor, who might have observed suspicious activity. The decision to expand public outreach included coordination with trucking associations, gas station networks, and hotel chains to distribute case information to employees who were most likely to encounter evidence of criminal activity along transportation corridors. These efforts had generated hundreds of tips, but none had produced breakthroughs that significantly advanced investigations. A transformação na family's approach incluía growing involvement em advocacy para legislative changes que would improve resources available para missing persons investigations. Emma Morrison havia testified before state legislature sobre need para enhanced technology, better coordination between jurisdictions, e increased funding para specialized units que could handle complex cases involving organized criminal activity. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because 2.5 years after Janet Morrison sent her last message before disappearing, we have reached the point of confronting the fundamental questions her case raises about our ability to protect people from organized criminal enterprises that operate with sophistication that challenges traditional law, enforcement capabilities, and our willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about crimes that may never be fully resolved. 2.5 years after Janet Morrison sent her last message before disappearing, we have reached the point of confronting the fundamental questions her case raises about our ability to protect people from organized criminal enterprises that operate with sophistication that challenges traditional law enforcement capabilities, and our willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about crimes that may never be fully solved. The most profound transformation that Janet's case provokes is not merely about missing persons statistics or unexplained automotive evidence, but about our understanding of the limits of our personal safety and our capacity to comprehend motivations behind crimes that transcend conventional categories. 2.5 years later, Janet Morrison remains missing, but her Honda Civic tells a story that no one can fully explain. Someone drove that car for over 800 miles during 3 weeks, meticulously maintained it, filled the tank, and then strategically left it where it would be easily found, with all systems functioning perfectly and positioned as if Janet had just left for a quick doctor's appointment. The lasting impact of the mystery on public perception of personal safety was profound, but it also revealed fundamental tensions between our need for rational explanations and our confrontation with phenomena that transcend current psychological frameworks. The question haunting her family is not just, where is Janet, but who wanted us to find the car? And more importantly, does that person even know where she is? The journey through 2.5 years of investigation revealed that Janet's Honda Civic forces a confrontation with limitations in our understanding of criminal behavior and our ability to protect people from influences that may operate beyond current law enforcement capabilities. The care demonstrated in maintaining her vehicle, combined with the strategic timing of its return, suggests levels of planning and psychological complexity that challenge established models for understanding criminal motivations. The hidden truth about Janet's legacy is that she represents the intersection of multiple domains of human experience: criminal psychology, technological investigation, family resilience, and community support, that rarely converge so dramatically. Traditional missing persons protocols, automotive forensics, behavioral analysis, and even community organizing all point toward recognizing that something extraordinary was at work in this case, even if disagreement remains about the exact nature of this phenomenon. The case of Janet Morrison ultimately leaves us with collective responsibilities, both to honor her memory and support her family, and to recognize that some crimes operate with a sophistication that requires evolution in our approaches to protection and investigation, and to remain vigilant about phenomena that remind us that security can be more fragile than we prefer to believe. What strikes me most about this investigation is how Janet's Honda Civic became more than just evidence. It transformed into a permanent question about the most complex and disturbing human motivations. 2.5 years later, someone still knows Janet's whereabouts, but chose to meticulously return her car instead of simply disposing of it as evidence. This psychological contradiction continues to challenge our understanding of how people can combine extreme violence with unexpected displays of consideration. The courage of Emma Morrison and her family in continuing to fight for answers, the dedication of investigators in applying new technologies to existing evidence, and the persistence of a community that refuses to forget Janet's fate combine to create a portrait of humanity facing the genuinely inexplicable. The Honda Civic forces us to confront the possibility that some crimes transcend our capacity for complete understanding, yet still deserve our attention, investigation, and deep respect for the person who was lost. Perhaps the most important lesson to emerge from the mystery of the car that returned on its own is that some questions are more valuable than their answers. Janet's Honda Civic teaches us humility about the limits of our knowledge of criminal behavior and reminds us that persistence in seeking truth can coexist with acceptance that some mysteries may never be fully resolved. If you've made it this far with me on this journey through one of the most genuinely perplexing automotive mysteries of recent years, you understand that the Janet Morrison case represents much more than missing person statistics. It's a window into aspects of criminal psychology that forces us to question our fundamental understanding of what people are capable of doing and why. Comment below, someone still knows the truth, if you also feel that whoever returned Janet's car in such perfect condition still possesses knowledge that could provide closure for her family. Click like if you value this type of investigation that explores real mysteries with both factual rigor and emotional respect for families who continue living with unresolved loss. It is this engagement that allows me to continue dedicating time to detailed research and collaboration with experts to bring understanding to cases that challenge our assumptions about crime and human behavior. If you want to continue exploring these mysteries, where automotive evidence tells stories that seem impossible, subscribe to the channel, because every week I bring cases that show how vehicles can become unexpected witnesses to events that transcend normal criminal patterns. There's a video over here about witnesses talking about shadows on the road. Click and stay with me there, because the world of technological mysteries is far more complex than we imagine.